I was having dinner alone at the same diner my late wife and I had visited every Friday for over 30 years when I spotted a pregnant waitress who looked painfully familiar. The moment she lifted her head, my heart froze. It was my daughter-in-law, the woman everyone believed had abandoned my son months ago. The second she recognized me, she rushed into the kitchen. I followed her, desperate for answers. But what she told me behind those swinging doors shattered everything I thought I knew. I am genuinely grateful you chose to spend this time here. Tell me something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. Every single response means something to me. One thing before we go further: certain elements of this story have been crafted for narrative and learning purposes. Names and locations are coincidental, but the lesson waiting at the end of this story is something I believe you needed to hear. Every Friday night for 31 years, Margaret and I sat at the corner booth of Lou's Diner on the intersection of Broad and High Street in Columbus, Ohio. She always ordered the pot roast. I always ordered the meatloaf. We argued about the same things: whether the coffee was too weak, whether the booth cushion needed replacing, whether the waitress with the red sneakers was flirting with the cook. Small arguments. The kind that hold a marriage together like mortar between bricks. Margaret had been gone for 3 years now. But I still came every Friday. I still sat in the corner booth. I still ordered the meatloaf. My name is Harold Mercer. Most people call me Hal, and I am 67 years old. I built Mercer Freight from nothing over 35 years. Started with one pickup truck and a handshake deal to haul furniture across Columbus. Now the company runs 42 freight trucks across 6 Ohio counties, holds 3 federal logistics contracts, and sits on a portfolio worth $68 million, including warehouses, real estate, and long-term shipping agreements. I am not the kind of man who talks about money easily, but I say it now so you understand what was at stake and what I nearly lost before I understood it was being taken. That Friday evening in late November 2024, I was not feeling like a man worth $68 million. My right hand trembled slightly as I reached for the laminated menu, the same menu Lou's had used since 1987, with the same grease stain on the corner of page 2. I had been hiding that tremor for 3 months. My family doctor, Dr. Patterson, told me it was high blood pressure combined with age-related fatigue. He adjusted my medication twice. The dizziness kept coming anyway, sudden disorienting waves that hit me hardest in the mornings, usually an hour or so after my first cup of coffee. "You doing okay tonight, Hal?" said Darlene, the Friday night waitress, appearing at my elbow with a pot of decaf. She was 53, built like a woman who had carried heavy trays for 30 years, which she had. "Fine as I'll ever be," I told her, turning the coffee cup right side up. "Just the meatloaf tonight, Darlene, and some water." "Same as always." She scribbled on her pad without looking down. "You want the green beans or the corn?" "Green beans." "Well, Margaret always got the corn," she said, not unkindly. "I know it," I said. "Green beans for me." She refilled the table's sugar caddy and moved on. I looked out the window at the November dark pressing against the glass. The parking lot of Lou's Diner held maybe a dozen cars, minivans, pickup trucks, one old Buick with a cracked taillight. This was not the kind of place where people came to be seen. It was the kind of place where people came because the portions were honest and nobody asked too many questions. My son Nathan had called that afternoon. He called most afternoons lately, checking in, he said, asking about my health, my appetite, whether I was sleeping enough. 3 months ago, he had started bringing me coffee every morning from Rosie's Roast on 5th Avenue. A large, dark roast, no sugar. He said it was his way of looking after me since Margaret passed. I had felt grateful for it. Genuinely grateful in the way a man feels when he realizes his adult child has finally started paying attention. I turned the coffee cup in my hand and thought about Nathan, 38 years old. Tall like me but thinner, with Margaret's dark eyes and her way of tilting his head when he was listening or pretending to listen. He had been working inside Mercer Freight for 9 years, managing our regional contracts and vendor relationships. Smart enough. Ambitious enough, sometimes too much. 2 years ago, he had pushed me hard to expand 12 new trucks, a federal contract bid that would have stretched our capital to the breaking point. I had said no. He had gone quiet after that. The kind of quiet that a father mistakes for maturity. The bell above Lou's front door jangled. A table of 4 near the window burst into laughter over something on someone's phone. Darlene shouted a carry-out order number toward the back. I reached for my water glass, and that was when I heard it. Footsteps from the kitchen side of the counter. Slow. Heavier than they should have been for someone that young. The kind of footsteps that carry extra weight not just in the body but somewhere deeper. I looked up without thinking about it. A young woman came through the swinging door from the kitchen, carrying a tray of water glasses. She wore the standard Lou's uniform dark slacks, a burgundy polo, a white apron tied twice around a belly that the apron could barely contain. Her dark hair was pulled back in a knot that was coming loose on one side. Her ankles were swollen above her non-slip shoes. She moved with the careful, deliberate effort of someone who had been on her feet for 8 hours and was determined not to show how much it hurt. She was 7 months pregnant. At least. I watched her set the water glasses down at the table beside mine without spilling a drop, her jaw set with concentration, her free hand hovering near her belly instinctively, even while the other hand worked. Then she turned slightly toward the light. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I felt it in my throat. I knew that face. I knew the line of that jaw, the way her left eyebrow sat slightly higher than the right. The small scar above her lip from a bicycle accident she had told me about at Thanksgiving 3 years ago, the first Thanksgiving she had spent with our family, nervous and laughing too quickly at my jokes, holding Nathan's hand under the table like a lifeline. "Claire," I said. The word came out before I could stop it, barely above a whisper, barely loud enough to cross the 4 feet between us. But she heard it. Her head snapped toward me. For one suspended second, her eyes met mine, and in that second, I watched the color drain from her face, the way water drains out of a bathtub, fast and complete. Then she turned and pushed back through the swinging kitchen door. I was out of my booth before my brain caught up with my legs. I pushed through the swinging door after her without a single thought about the fact that customers were not supposed to be back here, that I was 67 years old with a bad knee and a heart that had been behaving strangely for months, or that I had left a full glass of water and an unfinished order of meatloaf back at the corner booth, where Margaret and I used to argue about coffee. None of that mattered. The kitchen of Lou's diner hit me like a wall. Steam from the dishwasher, the sharp smell of fryer oil, the clang of pans, 2 line cooks shouting at each other over a ticket order. The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered above a stainless steel counter, lined with plates waiting to go out. I spotted her immediately. Claire had made it as far as the dry storage alcove at the back of the kitchen, before her body simply would not carry her any further. She had her back pressed against a shelf of canned tomatoes, both hands wrapped around her belly, her chest heaving with short, panicked breaths. "Claire." I kept my voice low, the way you speak to someone standing on a ledge. "Look at me. It's Hal. Just Hal." She shook her head, pressing herself harder against the shelf. "You need to go back out front, Mr. Mercer. Please. I can't do this right now." "You're shaking," I said, because she was. Her whole body was trembling, and not from cold. "I'm fine." Her voice cracked on the second word. "I'm fine, I just need you to go." "Claire." I took one step closer, slowly, hands open at my sides. "I am not going anywhere, and I am not here to drag you back to Nathan." That stopped her. Her breathing was still ragged, but her eyes fixed on mine with an expression that was equal parts terror and desperate, exhausted hope. The look of someone who has been running so long they have forgotten what it feels like to stop. Mrs. Cho? I spoke the name without turning around, because I had felt the presence of someone else in the kitchen the moment I walked through the door. A woman stepped out from behind the prep station. She was 58 or so, Korean-American, compact and sure on her feet, in the way of someone who had owned this kitchen for decades. She looked at Claire, then at me with the calm assessment of a woman who has seen more complicated situations than most people ever will, and has learned to read them fast. "You her family?" she asked me directly. "Father-in-law?" I said. She studied me for 3 full seconds. Then she untied her apron strings, hung the apron on its hook, and said, "Come with me." Her name was Linda Cho. She had owned Lou's Diner for 22 years. She led us through the back of the kitchen, past the industrial dishwasher and the walk-in cooler, down a short hallway that smelled of old cardboard and dried herbs, and pushed open a door I had never noticed before. The room was small enough that 3 people standing in it made it feel crowded. A folding cot against one wall, made up neatly with a flannel blanket and a flat pillow. A milk crate turned upside down, serving as a nightstand, with a water bottle, a phone charger, and a small tube of hand cream on top. A single hook on the wall holding a winter coat, and a change of clothes in a plastic grocery bag. And on the pillow, a composition notebook with a worn cover. I stood in the doorway of that room for a long moment without moving. "She came to me in the middle of November," Linda said from behind me, her voice matter-of-fact in the way of someone who has decided that facts are kinder than emotions right now. "Knocked on the back door at 6 in the morning asking if I needed kitchen help. I could see she was pregnant. I asked her how far along. She said almost 7 months. Linda paused. She had been sleeping in her car for 3 weeks before that. The air went out of my lungs. "In November," I said. My voice came out strange, flat and thin, like a wire pulled too tight. "In November," Linda confirmed. "I gave her the storage room. I gave her the job. She works hard, never complains, never asks for anything she hasn't earned." She looked at Claire, not at me, when she said the next part. "And she made me promise not to tell anyone she was here." Claire had settled herself onto the edge of the cot, one hand pressed to her lower back, the other resting on her belly. She would not look at me directly. She stared at a fixed point on the floor between us, her jaw tight, her eyes red but dry, a woman who had already spent all her tears a long time ago and had nothing left to cry with. "Claire," I said. My voice broke in the middle of her name and I could not stop it. "You slept in your car. In November. Pregnant." "I was okay," she said quietly. "The car had heat." "That is not—" I stopped. Started again. "That is not what I'm saying, and you know it." She finally looked up at me. "What do you want me to say, Mr. Mercer? That I should have done something different? Maybe I should have. But I didn't have anywhere to go that Nathan couldn't find, and I couldn't go back, and I couldn't—" Her voice hitched one sharp, involuntary sound, and she pressed her lips together hard and breathed through her nose until she had it back under control. "I couldn't risk him finding out about the baby. Not until I had enough." "Enough what?" I asked. She reached over and picked up the composition notebook from the pillow. She held it against her chest with both hands like it was the most valuable thing in the room, which I was beginning to understand it was. "Enough to protect us both," she said. I looked at the notebook. Then I looked at her face, the shadows under her eyes, the deliberate steadiness she was holding herself to, the way she sat with her spine straight, despite the exhaustion that was written into every line of her body. Then I looked down. Tucked under the edge of the cot, barely visible in the dim light, was a pair of women's heels, cream-colored satin, the kind worn to a wedding. They were wrapped carefully in a clear plastic bag sealed at the top, set against the baseboard, as if someone had placed them there with intention. My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. Those were the shoes from her wedding to my son. She had been sleeping in a storage room behind a diner kitchen, 7 months pregnant, working 10-hour shifts on swollen feet, and she had carried those shoes with her through all of it. "Claire," I managed. "What did Nathan tell you when he made you leave?" Her chin lifted slightly. Her eyes met mine with a steadiness that cost her something. "He didn't tell me anything, Mr. Mercer," she said. "He just changed the locks while I was at a doctor's appointment. My key didn't work when I came home. There was a box of my things on the porch. A beat. And a note that said the marriage was over and I should not contact him or his family again." The fluorescent light above us flickered once. Somewhere in the kitchen behind us, a timer went off, and nobody silenced it. "He told me you left," I said. "He told all of us you left voluntarily, that there was another man." Claire did not react with outrage or shock. She only nodded slowly, as though she had already run this conversation in her mind 100 times. "I know what he told you," she said, "and I know you believed him." She paused. "I don't blame you for that, Mr. Mercer. He's very good at it." She opened the composition notebook to the first page and held it out toward me. But I need you to know," she said, "that I have been writing down everything. Every date, every amount, every name." Her finger pressed against the first line of careful small handwriting. "Because I knew that someday someone was going to need to read it." Linda Cho pulled the storage room door shut behind her as she left, and the sounds of the kitchen faded to a low, muffled hum through the thin wall. The fluorescent tube above us buzzed steadily. Claire sat on the edge of the cot with the composition notebook held against her chest, and I dragged the single plastic chair from the corner and sat down facing her close enough that our knees were almost touching. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Not for me, for yourself. Say it out loud to someone who is actually listening." Claire pressed her lips together. Her chin trembled once violently, and then she locked it down with the kind of jaw-clenching effort that told me she had been doing exactly that, locking things down for a very long time. "It didn't happen all at once," she began. Her voice was low and careful, like she was carrying something fragile. "That's the part that's hardest to explain to people. You don't wake up one morning and realize your husband has turned into someone you don't recognize. It happens in pieces, little pieces, so small that every time you notice one, you tell yourself you're being crazy." "What was the first piece?" I asked. "One, the health insurance," she said. "August. I went to my OB appointment, and the receptionist told me my coverage had been terminated. I thought it was a billing error." She opened the notebook to a dog-eared page and turned it toward me. Her handwriting was small and precise, dates running down the left margin like a ledger. "I called the insurance company from the parking lot. They told me I had been removed from the policy in May, 3 months earlier." Nathan never said a word. My stomach dropped. "He removed you from the insurance while you were pregnant." "While I was 11 weeks pregnant," she said. "Yes." She turned another page. "September, he removed my name from the lease on the house. I found out when the landlord called to confirm a change of occupancy. October, he canceled the joint checking account and opened a new one in his name only. November 1st, he changed the emergency contact listed for me at his office from my name to hers." "And hers," I repeated. The word felt like touching a hot stove. "Diana." Claire nodded. "Diana Cole. She started coming around about 8 months ago. Nathan introduced her as a vendor contact, a sales rep for one of your freight partners." She paused. "But she wasn't there for the freight business, Mr. Mercer. She was there for the business of getting rid of me." "How long before you understood that?" "About 3 weeks after she started coming to the house for dinner." Claire's voice hardened slightly at the edges. "She sat at my kitchen table and ate the food I cooked and talked to Nathan like I was the guest, and she was the one who belonged there. And Nathan let her. He laughed at her jokes. He refilled her glass. He forgot my name twice in the same evening and corrected himself like it was nothing. My hands gripped the sides of the plastic chair hard enough that I felt the cheap plastic flecks under my fingers. "Claire, I'm not finished," she said, not harshly, but firmly. The night Nathan changed the locks, I had been at my prenatal appointment. 26 weeks. The baby was healthy. I remember the doctor showing me the heartbeat on the screen, and I was so relieved that I bought myself a cup of tea from the machine in the lobby just to celebrate a little. Her voice dropped. I came home and my key didn't work. I stood on the porch for 10 minutes trying the key over and over because my brain wouldn't accept what was happening. There was a cardboard box next to the door. Some clothes. My mother's recipe book. A photograph of my parents from their wedding. She stopped, breathed. No note. Nathan told you there was a note. There wasn't. Something hot and furious moved through my chest. He told me you left, I said, and my voice came out rough and shaking in a way I had not expected. He sat across from me at my own kitchen table and he cried, "Claire." He actually cried. He told me you had been seeing someone else for months, and you took money from the joint account, and you were gone. Claire looked at me steadily. Her eyes were dry, but her hands wrapped around the notebook had gone white at the knuckles. How much did he say I took? $11,000. She laughed, a short, sharp sound that had no humor in it. There was $412 in that account when he closed it, Mr. Mercer. I have the screenshot. She flipped to the back of the notebook and showed me a folded printout tucked into the inside cover. I took nothing. I had nothing to take. I put my elbows on my knees and pressed both hands over my face. My eyes burned. My throat ached the way it had not ached since the morning after Margaret's funeral, when I sat alone in her kitchen and could not remember how to make coffee. I believed him, I said into my palms. God help me, I believed every word he said. I know you did. Her voice was not accusatory. It was something worse, it was understanding. He's your son. Of course you believed him. I dragged my hands down my face and looked at her. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you call me directly? Claire set the notebook down on her knee. Her expression shifted, something complicated moving behind her eyes, equal parts grief and hesitation. I did, she said quietly. I tried. 3 times in August I drove to your house, Mr. Mercer. 3 times. She exhaled slowly. Every time Nathan answered the door. He told me you were resting, that you weren't feeling well, that it wasn't a good time. She held my gaze, and then he said something that scared me badly enough that I stopped trying. I sat very still. What did he say? She reached into the front pocket of her apron and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the creases, as if it had been unfolded and refolded many times. She held it out to me. He slipped this under the windshield of my car after the 3rd visit, she said. Read it. I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was Nathan's. I would have known it anywhere. If you come back here again, I will tell my father you threatened me. I will have you assessed. Nobody will believe a woman with a history of emotional instability. You will lose the baby. Walk away now, and at least you keep that. The paper shook in my hand. Not because my hand was trembling from the medication, because I was shaking with a rage so cold and clean, it felt like